Good morning and welcome. Today we're really pleased to have with us Steve Nesbit from Texas. Steve is the principal and founder of Prestonwood Trail Holdings. He's a well-known industry consultant. Steve, lovely to have you with us. Now you've flown all the way from Dallas, as I've said. You've come to ISE, I think, quite a few times now, and you're a regular at ISE, Infocom, DSE. What's your first impression of Infocom this year?
Oh, I think this is a terrific program that really touches a lot of different pieces as it relates to the digital media, digital signage industry. I think the thing that really struck me the most this year is just the significant advancements that are made in, I'll call it the canvas, the screens that we put our messages on. There are just all kinds of new things that I saw on that front that are either improvements over what we had in the past or some new spins on it. I think it's very good.
Interesting you say the word canvas. I like that because you're obviously not that AV or that technical, so you're talking about canvases as the big screens we see behind us. LED's been the big thing of the show because it's cheaper, now pretty good high resolution. This is 1.5 mil LED that we're using as a backdrop. So they are becoming bigger, so they're bigger canvases. That's a very good point.
Well, this plays right into the objectives when you put these screens. Let's just take inside stores or inside banks or inside restaurants, whatever they might be. I think one of the things we've learned over the years is you have to have size to be able to get attention. If people don't notice your screen, you just don't get the results that you want from the messages you're trying to get across. So we're seeing bigger and bigger screens, more video walls and all that in these locations. So these technologies that you just referenced, Adrian, are moving all in a direction that are favorable to the industry.
Now it's probably fair to say that you don't really get events like this in the US. There's nothing comparable really, I would have thought.
Not with the scale and size of this, and not with, also, the US shows tend to be very homogeneous. They're North American in nature. And here you really get people from all over the world as you walk through around the floor. Every time you turn around, you're hearing somebody speak a different language. So you really get a confluence of people from all over the world to see what's going on, and I think that's unique to this particular show.
So if you were advising, say, a global client and they wanted to launch products, this would be a good base, would it? I would assume.
No doubt, and I always advise my clients to come, and a large percentage are outside of North America, so this is a really good place to come because you really do get to see what's going on in the world.
Can you actually remember the first time you come to the show? I mean, the Digital Signage Hall is, a lot of people think that the Digital Signage Hall has made the show pretty much what it is. We're in the digital signage industry, so we might well be a little bit biased. But it's certainly grown. I mean, when we came 6 or 7 years ago, it was tiny.
Yes.
Can you remember the first time that you came to ISE and compare it?
It had to be 6 or 7 years ago that I've been coming, and many of the people who had stands from the traditional digital signage industry at that time, I'd say it's different on a couple of fronts. Number one, they tended to be only the CMS companies, the content management system companies. And today, making that comparison, I think you're seeing companies that are providing more solutions. They're adding more pieces to what they're offering their customers. The second thing that's hugely different, and I just think it's based upon the size of the companies that are in the industry now. Most of those companies tended to be on the outside periphery of each of the halls that they were in, with very, very small stands and maybe one person covering the stand. And now we're seeing multi-level stands with lots of people and including customer type examples in the stands. So that's reflective of the growth of the industry as well.
Okay. Now, you may have been not necessarily fully involved in the politics of the fourth day. This, as you remember, though, is the first ever fourth day. Any thoughts about the 4-day show format at all?
Well, whenever you start getting 60 or 65,000 people, as it's my understanding this show now has, squeezing all those people into a small number of days starts to become a real problem. So I think it's a natural evolution to grow this, to give people more time to dwell. There's an awful lot to see here. There's so much more to be seen than you have time to see it. So I could see why the management of the show are saying we're going to try this because I think it's favorable to the attendees.
Okay. Now when you come, you've got some advantage because you've been in previous years, but when you come, if you bring a client, where's the first place you would head to?
Well, I have a particular focus on the world of digital signage and digital media, so I by nature will first go to that hall and I want to see who's there and what they're displaying and all that kind of stuff. But from there, I bridge out. I want to see all the new things that are out there that might impact my particular focus of my practice.
So drones are probably not that much of interest to you, but certainly the Internet of Everything is quite big here as well.
No doubt, yeah, no doubt, yes. Yeah, drones are not as high on my list. They're kind of fun to see and to watch, but they're not really playing a role yet in my focus.
No. And so you've got coming up DSE, which is an interesting one because you think that when Mike Blackman started this show in Brussels or Geneva, I forget which one it was, he had 4,000 people, his very first ever show. We had a couple of people on the show the last few days who went to the first and second shows. And there are 10, 11, 12 or 13 years ago. Had 4,000 people. DSE will attract 4,000 people. You go, it's always a big part of your business. How would you position that to your clients as well? A digital signage expo which is dedicated to digital signage, or a bigger show like this with its own digital signage hall?
Yeah, let's take DSE first. First of all, it's very, very US centric. So international clients, if they want to see what's going on in the United States, then this is a good place to go. That would be a good place to go. But if my client was a supplier to the industry, unless they were looking for partnerships with other suppliers, that would be the reason they would go, as a partnership. If it's a user, then that's great because you get to see all the suppliers. But it's very much a supplier show versus a user show. As I look at badges of people at this ISE here, there are an awful lot of users that come here, and they're users from all over the world. So I think they're just very, very different programs.
Okay. And then Infocom, we've been together a few times with Infocom as well. I think Infocom, if it's in terms of digital signage, is playing a huge catch-up with this particular event. Yes. But you go to Infocom to, again, get the pulse of the North American industry.
Yeah, Infocom is closer to this than DSE is to this. But again, the scale and the focus tends to be more North America focus. And maybe not as many users that I've seen, at least my experience at Infocom, as there are here.
Yeah, we had David Labuscus, the CEO of Infocom, on the show yesterday. He was incredibly proud of what Mike Blackman has achieved here, which is a nice testing thing. Yeah. And us Europeans like showing you Americans how it's done as well.
You usually do that.
We usually do that.
Well, we'll stand our own ground.
So in terms of the business climate, I mean, again, you do lots of work pretty globally. How do you see the business in 2016 going? What's the strength areas? Retail, hospitality?
Yeah, I think that's a very appropriate question as we sit at the beginning of the year. My sense is the digital signage, digital media industry with the advertising component to it is going to be a bit counter-cyclical this year compared to many other years, where we would rise and fall based upon the general economic climate of the world. The economic climate in the world right now is very uncertain, as you well know, in most parts of the world with not big economic growth. Yet, we're seeing more and more companies looking at pretty big growth this coming year in our industry. And I attribute that to the dynamics of what we do is right in the middle of the bullseye of the way people are consuming media. They don't consume it as much anymore, as you know, this is reading out of your playbook, from the traditional media places in the past anymore. They're looking for new ways, particularly millennials. And what we do in this industry of placing these screens where people go on a day-to-day basis in their lives and advertising on them and giving them messages and combining that with messaging that goes across different types of platforms, whether it's the internet, whether it's mobile. We're right in the middle of a revolution that's happening in the world. And so I'm seeing upward trends from companies that I'm talking to, even in the midst of uncertain economic growth this year on the global basis.
Even in North America with the presidential election coming up?
Yeah, very much so.
Wow.
Simply because companies recognize they're not going to stop advertising and they're not going to stop trying to communicate with their customers. And so I'm seeing upward trends and definitive upward trends across the board.
Brilliant. Steve, thank you very much for coming along.